Imagine waking up one morning, looking at the world and thinking, you know what humanity really needs? A hat that also functions as a bird cage. Because apparently, fire, the wheel, and antibiotics weren't enough. We had to keep going until the timeline produced electric forks, vibrating belts for fat loss, and a bicycle powered entirely by sheer embarrassment. History isn't just full of genius breakthroughs. It's also littered with ideas so baffling, they feel like rejected pranks from a fever dream. And if you think that's the dumbest thing humans have ever patented, buckle up, because it only gets stranger from here. 1. In the 1930s, city parents apparently thought, fresh air is good for babies. Let's hang them out of a window like laundry. Thus, the baby cage was born. A wire box bolted to apartment windows, where your infant dangled several stories above the sidewalk like a particularly anxious pigeon. The sales pitch was that babies needed sunlight and ventilation, as if vitamin D outweighed the risk of gravity. Imagine being a passerby, glancing up, and seeing a toddler suspended like a chicken in a rotisserie cage, casually waving at pigeons. And parents claimed it was safer than going to the park. Sure, Karen, because a playground has swings and germs, but your solution is basically a baby bird cage installed by the same people who brought us fire escapes. The miracle isn't that this product existed. The miracle is that humanity somehow survived long enough to discontinue it. 2. Back in the 1920s and 30s, people decided that if a little science is good, then a whole lot of radiation must be better. Enter radium toothpaste, radium cosmetics, and even radium water. Yes, glowing death in a bottle, marketed as energy drinks. Wealthy elites chugged radioactive cocktails like they were Gatorade, convinced it would cure arthritis, make them stronger, and maybe help them see in the dark. Spoiler, it did none of those things, unless you count glowing bones as a feature. One millionaire even drank so much radium water that his jaw literally fell off, which I imagine was not the youthful glow he signed up for. It's almost poetic, a self-inflicted Thanos snap, courtesy of the wellness industry. The next time someone tells you their detox juice cleanses toxins, remember, just a century ago, toxins were the drink. Third World War I gave us trench warfare, mustard gas, and the most tragic invention ever, a gas mask for horses. Because nothing says modern warfare like a giant, terrified animal stumbling around the battlefield with a leather bag over its head. These things looked less like protective equipment and more like failed steampunk cosplay. Soldiers claimed they were saving their cavalry. In reality, they were strapping a potato sack with goggles onto a horse and hoping for the best. Imagine trying to convince a 1,200-pound animal to stand calmly while you tie it into what looks like a bondage prop from a German art film. This wasn't protection. It was animal abuse with extra steps. Honestly, if the horses could talk, they'd probably say, "Yeah, no thanks. I'll just take my chances with the mustard gas." 4. In the 1920s, someone invented a gas station pump designed to spray chloroform into a thief's face during a robbery. Yes, the idea was, robbery? Knock 'em out cold with a face full of chemicals. Because apparently in the golden age of invention, nobody considered the possibility of wind. Imagine pulling up to fill your car and suddenly a breeze carries knockout gas across the lot. Congratulations, you're unconscious in front of your own Buick. And the safety testing? Probably just some guy named Earl saying, "It'll work fine, don't worry." Of course, the design was discontinued. Not because it was insane, but because lawsuits piled up. Turns out when your customers keep collapsing at the gas station, it's bad for repeat business. Who knew? 5. Somewhere in the 17th century Europe, a man decided music needed a darker edge. He invented the cat piano, where each key pressed down on a cat's tail, producing a different yowl. Imagine a symphony, but instead of violins, it's an orchestra of cats screaming in agony. It was pitched as both an entertainment device and a cure for melancholy, because nothing cheers people up like a soundtrack of animal torture. This isn't even quirky, it's straight-up medieval villain energy. I'd like to think it was never actually built, but the fact that it was seriously proposed says enough. Humanity once looked at cats, adorable, fluffy creatures, and thought, you know what would improve Beethoven? Screaming. 6. In the 1940s, someone thought, surfing's cool, but what if we make it deadly? Enter the motorized surfboard, essentially a plank with a boat engine strapped underneath. The idea was that you'd glide effortlessly across the waves, or more likely, shred your legs off on the propeller. It was marketed as the future of water sports, but the future turned out to be lawsuits, severed toes, and surfers face-planting at 30 miles per hour. There's a reason regular surfboards survived, and this didn't. One is about balance and connection with nature. The other is about explaining to your insurance company why you need prosthetic calves. 7. This genius invention was an alarm clock that runs away when it rings. Literally, it rolls off your nightstand and scurries around the floor like a caffeinated Roomba, forcing you to chase it. Sounds clever until you remember. Mornings already feel like an Olympic event. The last thing anyone needs at 6 a.m. is a game of Pokémon Go Insomnia Edition. Imagine explaining to your boss why you're late. Sorry, my alarm clock hid under the couch. Shockingly, the product actually sold for a while, which proves two things. People hate mornings, and capitalism will monetize suffering faster than you can say snooze button. 8. In the 1960s, inventors tried to solve housework with dog power. The idea: strap a harness to your dog, attach a vacuum, and let Fido clean the floors while he wanders around. It's the kind of invention that looks amazing in a sketch and absolutely horrifying in reality. First, dogs hate vacuums. Second, can you imagine the trauma of a golden retriever dragging around a roaring machine, convinced it's being chased by a demon? Not to mention what happens when your dog deposits something mid-cleaning. Spoiler: the vacuum doesn't care if it's dust or something much, much worse. 9. The 1950s gave us filtered cigarettes, asbestos in construction, and, naturally, the cigarette umbrella. It was a tiny umbrella attached to your cigarette so you could smoke in the rain. Because heaven forbid anyone wait 5 minutes for a drizzle to pass. Imagine looking so determined to inhale tar that you invent a hat for your Marlboro. This is peak addiction engineering, protecting your cigarette from the weather, but not your lungs from, cancer. The marketing slogan might as well have been, "Stay dry, die anyway." 10. Long before AirPods and selfie sticks, some inventor in Japan created a stylus you could strap to your nose. Why? So you could use your phone hands-free. Because apparently, holding a device with your literal hands was too much work. Imagine sitting on the subway, scrolling with your face like a confused woodpecker. The design looked like a tiny unicorn horn, turning every user into a discount narwhal. And let's be honest, if you're at the point where your nose is doing your texting, maybe what you actually need is not a stylus, but fewer texts. 11. Ah yes, the 1950s miracle cure for obesity. Stand perfectly still while a giant rubber belt jiggles your stomach into submission. People genuinely believed shaking fat was the same as losing it. Spoiler, it wasn't. But gyms across America installed these machines, and hopeful housewives lined up to vibrate their waistlines like human jello molds. The sad truth is it burned about as many calories as watching TV, which coincidentally is what most people were doing before wasting their savings on this mechanical belly slap. Honestly, if vibrating really melted fat, America would have discovered six-pack abs by riding public buses. 12. At some point, someone decided multitasking had gone too far, so they invented a combo unit, a toilet with a coffee maker built into the tank. Yes, brew while you poo. The marketing was all about saving time, as if the 45 seconds between bathroom and kitchen were society's biggest inefficiency. And of course, the water source? Technically, the same tank that flushes your waste. Don't worry, they claimed it was sanitary, which is a lot like claiming Taco Bell is gourmet. If you're drinking coffee brewed next to your plumbing, congratulations! You've hit rock bottom in both caffeine addiction and dignity. 13. The 1960s thought personal privacy could be solved by a giant plexiglass helmet called the Cone of Silence. You wore it over your head in an office, so coworkers couldn't overhear your phone calls, except it muffled your own voice so badly that you couldn't hear yourself either. It was like willingly shoving your head in a fishbowl and calling it progress. Meetings turned into mime shows, with everyone gesturing wildly under their domes like astronauts suffering a breakdown. Honestly, it wasn't so much an invention as a prank that somehow got mass-produced. 14. This gem from the 1940s combined two human needs, grooming and exercise. It was a stationary bike hooked up to a hairdryer. The faster you pedaled, the hotter the air blew. In theory, it encouraged fitness. In practice, it left women red-faced, sweating, and blasting their scalp with oven-level heat. Imagine explaining this to your stylist. Yes, my split ends are from cardio. It's the kind of invention that assumes everyone wants to look fabulous, but also suffer heat stroke. Spoiler, they didn't. 15. Because apparently photography wasn't exciting enough, the 1930s gave us a revolver with a built-in camera. Every time you pulled the trigger, it snapped a photo instead of a bullet. Cute idea, except the thing still looked exactly like a real gun. Picture this. You're a tourist in Paris, posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, and your friend suddenly whips out a six-shooter. Congratulations, you're both on an international watch list. It's less, say cheese, and more, say freeze. This invention died out fast, but mostly because pointing firearms at strangers turned out to be unpopular. 16. You've heard of glue sticks. Now imagine one filled with butter. That's exactly what someone invented. A portable tube of melted butter you could smear directly onto bread. Convenient? Sure. Dignified? Absolutely not. It turned every picnic into a low-budget arts and crafts class, complete with greasy fingers and questionable hygiene. The marketing pitch was, no more messy knives, as if spreading butter was society's great burden. Honestly, if your life is ruined by a butter knife, maybe you don't deserve toast. 17. In the 1980s, fitness culture went fully insane. People wore shiny plastic sauna suits that trapped heat and sweat, basically turning you into a human-baked potato. Joggers would pass out mid-run, collapsing on sidewalks like deflated trash bags. And the weight loss? Just water. You'd lose 5 pounds in sweat, rehydrate, and gain it right back. It was less exercise equipment and more a self-contained microwave for humans. On the plus side, it did teach people an important life lesson. If you look like a foil-wrapped burrito, maybe you're not burning fat. You're just marinating. 18. In the 1970s, some brilliant minds decided that umbrellas were too focused on rain and not enough on eating. So they invented the spaghetti fork umbrella, literally a little canopy that clipped onto your fork so your noodles wouldn't splatter sauce on your shirt. Because clearly, the real tragedy of pasta isn't carbs, it's stains. Imagine a candlelit dinner, your date twirling fettuccine under a personal awning like some kind of culinary storm shelter. Romantic, right? Except it looked exactly like you were holding a cocktail umbrella stolen from a tiki bar, and nothing screams sophistication like guarding your meatballs from imaginary rainfall. The worst part? It didn't even work. Sauce went everywhere, umbrella included. So instead of a messy shirt, you got a messy fork accessory. Basically, humanity invented a raincoat for spaghetti and then quietly shoved it back into the junk drawer where it belonged. 19. In the 1920s, inventors were obsessed with convenience, which explains why someone thought it was a good idea to invent the hat radio. Yes, instead of carrying your clunky wireless set, you could strap it directly to your skull and walk around blasting music into your ears through what looked like antennae sprouting from your scalp. It was half headwear, half alien cosplay, and 100% ridiculous. The marketing promised freedom. Listen to jazz anywhere you go. In reality, it made you look like the government's first attempt at Bluetooth surveillance. And the sound quality? Imagine static, feedback, and maybe half a saxophone if you stood perfectly still. I picture men in suits strolling down the street, wires dangling out of their hats like rejected Dr. Seuss characters, all while pretending they were on the cutting edge of technology. Spoiler, the real cutting edge was your hat short-circuiting during a light drizzle. 20. In the 1980s, there was a magical window of time when society believed literally anything could be solved with magnets. Enter the magnetic health sandals, flip-flops embedded with magnets that supposedly cured pain, boosted energy, and maybe even balanced your aura. In other words, footwear that doubled as a snake oil salesman. People wore them like they were unlocking superpowers, marching proudly across sidewalks with what was essentially a refrigerator door stuck to their feet. Doctors pointed out, repeatedly, that magnets on sandals don't cure arthritis. But hey, when has medicine ever stood a chance against good marketing? The only real effect was your shoes occasionally sticking to metal floors like you were auditioning for Spider-Man: The Retirement Years. But credit where it's due, at least they were honest about one thing. You really did walk around looking like a complete magnet for bad decisions. 21. Ah, the self-stirring mug. The invention for people so lazy they looked at a spoon and thought, that's too much cardio. A little button on the handle activated a spinning mechanism inside, swirling your coffee like a miniature whirlpool of shame. The ad campaigns were all about efficiency. No more stirring, no more wasted time. Which is hilarious because it took longer to clean the stupid mechanism than to stir with a spoon in the first place. But that's the beauty of invention, right? Taking a job that takes 1 second and turning it into a $29.99 gadget that breaks after 3 washes. Imagine someone in 2005 proudly sipping from their self-stirring mug while their friends just used spoons. It's less innovation and more a public confession that you've officially lost the battle with caffeine. 22. In the 1870s, someone actually patented the coffin alarm because apparently being buried alive was such a common concern that people demanded a backup plan. The invention was simple: a rope tied to your hand inside the coffin, connected to a bell above ground. If you woke up 6 feet under, you'd tug the string and ding ding, let the living know you were still kicking. Romantic, right? Except graveyards don't exactly have night watchmen listening for late-night bells. The reality is some poor sexton would hear a faint ring, shrug, and go back to drinking. And let's be honest, by the time anyone dug you up, oxygen would have handled the problem anyway. Still, the sheer fact that society needed a break glass in case of premature burial plan tells you everything you need to know about Victorian priorities. 23. The 1950s brought us nuclear everything. Nuclear families, nuclear fear, and of course, the nuclear-powered car. The Ford Nucleon was a concept vehicle powered by a tiny reactor, because what could possibly go wrong with strapping an active uranium core to the family sedan? The idea was that you'd drive thousands of miles without refueling, which sounds cool until you rear-end someone in traffic and level half a city block. The prototype looked sleek, futuristic, and, let's be real, like something a Bond villain would commute in. Ford quietly shelved the project when engineers realized the words nuclear and fender bender don't mix. But imagine if it had actually taken off. The average suburban dad in the 60s casually explaining to the insurance adjuster why his commute triggered a minor fallout event. Progress, baby. 24. Speaking of terrible vehicle ideas, let's talk about the Monowheel. It was a giant single-wheel contraption that you sat inside while a tiny engine pushed you forward. Imagine a hamster ball, but with gasoline and higher medical bills. These death donuts popped up in the early 20th century, and while they looked futuristic, they had one fatal flaw: steering, or rather, the complete lack of it. Drivers basically rolled around like a physics experiment gone wrong, wobbling, tipping, and occasionally rolling completely upside down. It was part circus act, part suicide attempt, and 100% a reminder that not every sketch in Leonardo da Vinci's notebook deserved to be built. Watching a monowheel in action was like watching someone pilot a washing machine on fast spin. Entertaining, yes, but not exactly practical transportation. 25. The 1980s gave us big hair, synth pop, and the Walkman. But someone thought, this isn't immersive enough. Let's add an inflatable bubble, enter the Isolator helmet. A massive head enclosure with built-in speakers, designed so you could focus without distractions. It made you look like an astronaut training for a mission to planet homework. The selling point was that you could shut out all noise, concentrate, and block visual clutter. The reality was sweating profusely inside a plastic dome while your coworkers stared like you'd lost a bet. Imagine trying to sip coffee while sealed inside your own humidified terrarium. If the helmet didn't kill productivity, the claustrophobia certainly did. Honestly, if the choice is between noise at the office or sitting inside a portable fish tank, I'll take Karen's typing any day. 26. In the late 19th century, doctors prescribed the health roller, a device where you strapped yourself onto a table while massive wooden rollers kneaded your body. It was marketed as a cure for everything from poor circulation to hysteria. Spoiler: it cured nothing except maybe your will to live. Imagine lying there as a contraption the size of a horse carriage mashed your spine like dough, while your physician nodded seriously about rebalancing your humors. This wasn't medical therapy. It was medieval torture with marketing brochures. And the funniest part? People kept buying them, convinced their daily roller session was essential to wellness. Meanwhile, the only thing actually rolling was their chiropractor's eyes. 27. Behold the rejuvenating face mask of the 1920s, a rubber contraption you strapped onto your face that looked like something from a horror movie. It promised to tighten skin, erase wrinkles, and make you look younger. In reality, it made you look like Leatherface raiding Sephora. The mask trapped heat and sweat, essentially slow cooking your pores like dumplings. Women would sit for hours in these terrifying contraptions, flipping through magazines while looking like a serial killer on spa day. Did it work? Absolutely not. The only thing it rejuvenated was the nightmares of anyone who walked into the room mid-treatment. Honestly, Botox may be weird, but at least it doesn't make you look like a Victorian slasher villain. 28. Let's not forget the treadmill bike. Some genius thought, cycling's fine, but what if we made it worse? It was a giant outdoor treadmill strapped to wheels, meaning you ran on a conveyor belt to move the bike forward. Congratulations, you've just reinvented walking, but bulkier, slower, and more humiliating. Imagine trying to explain this to your neighbor. No, I'm not jogging, I'm jogging, on a bike. It combined all the efficiency of running in place with the dignity of tripping in public. And of course, if you slipped, the treadmill launched you backwards like a cartoon character. To this day, it remains one of humanity's finest reminders that not every workout innovation needs to leave the garage. 29. In the 1960s, someone decided beer wasn't portable enough, so they invented the beer can belt. It was exactly what it sounds like, a fashion belt with slots for 6 cans of beer. The idea was that you'd always have refreshments on hand. In reality, it made you look like a human vending machine stumbling through a barbecue. Practical? Sure. If your definition of practical includes warm beer sloshing around your waistline while strangers treat you like a walking cooler. And of course, nothing screams responsible adult like slapping your midsection full of Budweisers before driving home. The only real achievement here was proving you could weaponize beer belly optics before you even started drinking. 30. Then we had the portable record player, a turntable you strapped around your neck so you could listen to vinyl on the go. It was marketed as the future of music portability, right before the Walkman showed up and embarrassed it into extinction. The biggest problem? Records skip if you even breathe on them too hard. So jogging with your vinyl strapped to your chest was less music on the go and more avant-garde stuttering remixes of Elvis. And the device itself weighed nearly 20 pounds. Imagine trying to look cool on a train while lugging a full DJ booth around your torso. The only thing portable about this invention was the back pain you carried with it. 31. The baby mop was an actual product. Baby clothes with mop-like tassels on the arms and legs so your crawling infant could clean the floors. Because nothing says responsible parenting like turning your child into unpaid janitorial staff. The pitch was genius in its cruelty. Babies crawl anyway, so why not put them to work? Of course, real babies mostly drool, cry, and fall over, meaning your floors got about 2 square feet of cleaning smeared with juice stains. Not to mention the optics. A literal child labor outfit sold in toy stores. Parents loved it as a gag gift, but I'd bet money some dad somewhere genuinely expected a spotless kitchen. Honestly, if you're outsourcing chores to your offspring before they can walk, maybe just buy a Roomba. 32. In 1936, engineers in London proudly unveiled the aerial walking suit designed to protect pedestrians from traffic accidents. It was essentially a padded Michelin Man costume with springs, so you could bounce harmlessly off cars. The image alone is priceless. Businessmen waddling across the street in inflatable body armor, casually deflecting Fords like human airbags. Practicality? Zero. The suits were bulky, hot, and impossible to store anywhere but a warehouse. And if you fell on your back, you needed help getting up, which kind of defeats the purpose of safety gear. The project was abandoned, probably after someone realized no one wanted to look like a sumo wrestler just to cross the street. 33. For reasons I'll never understand, the 19th century gave us the Mustache cup. It was a normal teacup with a little ceramic guard across the top so men could sip without dunking their mustaches into tea. Because apparently, instead of trimming their facial hair or just wiping it, Victorian men demanded custom crockery. Imagine sitting at high tea, daintily sipping through your mustache slot like some kind of aristocratic toddler using a sippy cup. It was peak over-engineering, solving a problem that literally required a napkin. To this day, antique collectors treasure them, probably because nothing screams class quite like designing a cup that openly admits your upper lip is out of control. 34. The egg cuber, A kitchen gadget that turned hard-boiled eggs into squares. That's it. That's the entire function. It didn't make them taste better, cook faster, or last longer. It just transformed perfectly normal eggs into geometric abominations, as if breakfast was auditioning for a role in Minecraft. The advertising promised easy stacking for sandwiches, which is hilarious because I've never seen anyone struggling with round eggs like they were unruly bowling balls. Instead, people bought this plastic contraption, pressed their eggs into cubes, and then stared at them like they'd just committed a crime against breakfast. Honestly, when you've reached the point of squaring your eggs, maybe it's not the eggs that need fixing. 35. In the 1960s, someone invented the portable sauna, which was basically a zip-up human toaster bag. You'd sit in a shiny silver sack with only your head sticking out like a baked potato that could complain. The promise was detox and relaxation, but the reality was sweating uncontrollably inside a personal trash bag while your spouse judged you from the couch. Imagine your neighbor walking in, seeing you zipped up like a Capri Sun, and realizing this is what human progress had come to. The real miracle is that nobody thought, hey, trapping heat inside a plastic cocoon sounds like a great way to cook a person. Because that's exactly what it was, a crock-pot for people who thought spas were too expensive. 36. Let's talk about the pistol hairdryer, because nothing says good morning like pointing a gun-shaped object at your face. In the 1950s, some genius thought it would be stylish to design hairdryers that looked exactly like revolvers, complete with trigger handles. Supposedly chic. But imagine trying to explain to your house guest why you're blasting hot air at your head with what looks like a weapon. In a world where nervous neighbors already panic at shadows, this was the fastest way to get your blowout mistaken for a hostage situation. Honestly, I can't decide if this was a salon tool or just a Darwin Award waiting to happen. Either way, I guarantee every single one came with free paranoia. 37. The Doryu 2-16 camera gun took things one step dumber. It was an actual pistol body with a camera inside. Yes, in 1950s Japan, photographers could snap pictures by literally aiming a handgun at strangers. It was intended for police crime scenes, but let's be honest, nothing screams casual family photo like Grandpa whipping out a firearm at the picnic. Imagine Disneyland banning selfie sticks but allowing tourists to aim full revolvers at Mickey. The pictures were probably blurry too, since everyone being photographed was screaming and running. It wasn't just impractical, it was socially suicidal, proof that some inventions existed purely to terrify bystanders. 38. Then there was the Flamethrower tricycle, because apparently teaching kids to ride wasn't dangerous enough. This gem popped up in the 1950s, a tricycle rigged with a tiny gasoline sprayer that shot fire behind it like a budget Mad Max stunt. It was advertised as exciting fun for children, which is parental code for, we didn't like Timmy anyway. Imagine your 6-year-old pedaling through the neighborhood, trailing flames like an action movie villain. Forget scraped knees. These kids were one sharp turn away from burning down the cul-de-sac. And yet, some inventor filed the paperwork, convinced this was wholesome family entertainment. Childhood never stood a chance. 39. Of course, adults weren't spared either. Enter the cigarette holder with a built-in gas mask. Yes, it let you keep smoking while also filtering the smoke you were choosing to inhale. The logic was so backwards it looped around into performance art. It looked like Darth Vader auditioning for a Lucky Strike commercial. People wore these contraptions proudly, as if they'd discovered a loophole in basic biology. See, lungs don't mind if it's filtered. Spoiler, they did. It's the ultimate example of human denial, designing an entire gadget so you could pretend the poison you're sucking down is somehow healthier. 40. Then there's the personal submarine for duck hunting. Invented in the 1940s, this was a one-man submersible that let hunters sneak up under lakes and pop up through hatches to ambush ducks. That's right, people built submarines to outwit animals with brains the size of grapes. It was less hunting and more military operation against poultry. The machine was cramped, slow, and terrifyingly easy to sink, meaning most users spent more time drowning than shooting. All to catch birds that you could have just waited for with a shotgun on the shore. It's less invention and more midlife crisis in a tin can. 41. And then came the TV glasses of the 1960s. These were giant goggles with tiny televisions strapped to each lens. Think of them as the great-grandfather of VR, except instead of immersing you in another world, they just made you cross-eyed while watching black and white reruns. They weighed several pounds. needed a cord attached to a power outlet, and guaranteed a headache after 10 minutes. But hey, you could brag that you were wearing the future. The reality was looking like a rejected Star Trek prop while trying to balance a toaster on your face. VR may be awkward today, but at least it doesn't electrocute you if you sneeze. 42. In the 19th century, there was the cigarette dispenser walking stick. Picture an elegant gentleman strolling the park, tapping his cane, then pressing a button to eject a fresh cigarette from the handle. Because apparently, pockets were just too peasant-like. It was marketed as a mark of refinement, but in practice, it was basically vaping for Victorians, a way to broadcast that your addiction deserved its own gadget. Imagine sitting at dinner, pulling out your walking stick, and lighting up with a flourish like some kind of nicotine wizard. Practical? Not at all. Entertaining? Absolutely. 43. The hurricane bed of the 1930s was an engineering masterpiece of paranoia. It was a massive steel cocoon with shutters, designed to protect you from storms, burglars, or, I swear, machine gun fire. Because apparently, people wanted their bedrooms to double as bomb shelters. Imagine climbing into bed, bolting the shutters, and lying there in a coffin-like box while your spouse snored inches away. Nothing screams restful sleep like prepping for doomsday every night. The ads promised absolute safety, which is technically true, because you were already halfway buried alive. Honestly, it was less a bed and more a practice coffin you could nap in. 44. We also had the shower hood, a rubber face mask from the 1970s designed to keep water from ruining women's makeup while bathing. It was a clear plastic dome strapped around your neck, turning every shower into a suffocation simulator. The promise was beauty. The reality was foggy plastic walls and a creeping sense of drowning on dry land. Imagine standing under hot water, sealed inside your own sweaty greenhouse, desperately trying to wash your hair without panicking. It was less an invention and more a horror movie audition, a test run for Final Destination Spa Day. 45. Then came the inflatable life preserver suit, basically a wearable balloon that puffed up so you could float in the ocean. Problem: it also inflated your arms and legs, leaving you flailing helplessly like the Michelin Man having a seizure. The ads showed confident swimmers bobbing along happily. In reality, you'd look like a beached parade balloon screaming for someone to pop you. It solved drowning by replacing it with humiliation and a very slow drift toward hypothermia. Honestly, if you saw someone wearing this, you wouldn't rescue them. You'd assume they were part of a Macy's Thanksgiving rehearsal. 46. The 1930s also blessed us with the ice cube mask, a rubber contraption where you'd insert frozen cubes into slots that pressed against your face. Supposedly a beauty treatment, but really just cryotherapy cosplay. Women would sit for hours, locked in place, their faces pressed to slowly melting cubes like desperate cocktails. The selling point was tightened skin. The actual effect was frostbite and a general sense of despair. Imagine answering the door with literal ice strapped to your cheeks while the mailman debated calling social services. Beauty may be pain, but this was more like refrigeration with extra steps. 47. In the 1980s, Japan unveiled the sleeping desk, a school desk with a built-in padded headrest so students could nap in class. It looked like standard furniture until you folded it out into a pillow station. The logic was twisted brilliance. If students were going to sleep anyway, why not monetize it? Teachers hated it, parents bought it, and classrooms basically became hotels for teenagers. Imagine your math teacher droning on while an entire row of kids is face-planted in ergonomic slumber. Honestly, it was less an invention and more a confession that algebra is nature's sedative. 48. Then came the car exhaust burger cooker. In the 1950s, people actually marketed metal trays that clipped to your tailpipe so you could grill meat while driving. Yes, dinner cooked with the sweet aroma of carbon monoxide. Road trips became gourmet adventures in poisoning. The brochures showed smiling families enjoying hamburgers, fresh off the engine. The reality was gray patties marinated in exhaust fumes and topped with a side of lung cancer. Imagine pulling over, serving your kids these carcinogenic cheeseburgers, and calling it wholesome Americana. Congratulations, you just invented the first slow cooker that doubles as a death sentence. 49. The Cyclomer was a bicycle from the 1930s designed to ride on both land and water. It had giant hollow floats instead of tires, meaning you could pedal straight into a lake like some discount James Bond villain. In theory, it was amphibious transport. In practice, it was a bike-shaped buoy. Riders would pedal furiously while bobbing helplessly in circles, slowly drifting downstream. Imagine the humiliation of showing off your new water bike only to get overtaken by ducks. It was less a vehicle and more a public service announcement about why boats exist. 50. And then there's the electric fork, marketed as a miracle for spaghetti eaters. It twirled automatically at the press of a button, so you never had to manually spin pasta again. Because apparently, turning your wrist half an inch was too exhausting for modern humanity. The ads called it fun and efficient. Translation: a $20 gadget that turned eating into a humiliating carnival act. The fork would often spin uncontrollably, slapping noodles onto your shirt like an overeager toddler with finger paint. It didn't solve spaghetti struggles, it created slapstick comedy at your own expense. Honestly, this one makes the spaghetti umbrella look sophisticated. 51. And finally, the crowning jewel of human idiocy, the vibrating abdominal reducing machine of the 1920s. It was a giant contraption where you strapped your stomach into a shaking metal plate while the inventor promised fat would just fall off. Entire gyms filled with these clanking torture devices, rows of hopeful customers jiggling like jello molds at an earthquake convention. Did it work? Of course not. It just made you nauseous while loosening your dental fillings. But here's the kicker. 100 years later, the exact same scam still exists, repackaged as toning belts sold on late-night infomercials. We've literally spent a century vibrating our stomachs and calling it progress. If that doesn't prove we've learned absolutely nothing, I don't know what does. And there you have it, proof that human history is less a story of genius and more a blooper reel with patents. We've barely scratched the surface, and I guarantee the archives are still overflowing with even dumber ideas. So tell me, which one deserves the crown for most gloriously stupid, and what ridiculous invention did I miss? Drop it in the comments, cast your vote, and if you want to keep diving headfirst into humanity's dumpster of brilliance gone wrong, hit like, subscribe, and brace yourself. It only gets weirder from here.